Welcome back, it's 9, and today we've got a bunch of new information about Final Fantasy XVI straight from the producer, Naoki Yoshida. He did a bunch of interviews with a ton of different outlets, and in today's video we are going to highlight all the new stuff that we've learned from all these different interviews. Now, before we get into that, if you could do me a huge favor, like the video, subscribe, share it with a friend, share it on any other platform that you use. It helps the channel a ton. Now let's kick it off. And this is all courtesy of Gematsu.com, who collected all the new key information from all the different interviews that have happened. Now let's talk about the new info. There's a lot here. We're gonna take the specific key points and we're going to discuss them. So first things first, the protagonist Clive has an arsenal of powerful attacks and abilities based off traditional Final Fantasy summons, which can be cycled through in real time, enabling powerful combination attacks. After Clive claims an Eikon, those are the summons of the world, they're called Eikon's power, he will be able to unlock its abilities in an ability tree through points earned in battle. Now, this isn't something groundbreaking, this isn't nothing that we've never seen in other video games, but it is different for Final Fantasy, right? Seeing first of all, an action-based battle system is not new either, but in this way, it is new. We've never seen this specific way done before for Final Fantasy games. Now, we know that the battle designer is somebody who worked on Devil May Cry, and that game has incredible combat. Like, that's one of the greatest combat systems I've ever seen for a single-player game. So for me, that was exciting to hear that he was working on Final Fantasy XVI. So that looks like it will transition, or it'll definitely translate well for this Final Fantasy game. Obviously, the skill points and all that stuff is pretty much video games 101 these days, and it looks interesting to see where this will go. We've seen this already in trailers when he's attacking and, you know, you'll see like a wing come out or an arm or whatever it may be. So these are kind of examples of what that would look like. This also tells us that he's going to control many Eikons. Before, we weren't sure if it was just going to be a couple or one or how that was going to work, but now we know for sure that he's going to claim the powers of many Eikons, which makes this even more interesting. So each Eikon will add to a skill tree. Very, very good news, to me at least. It definitely makes it seem like the depth on the gameplay system, the battle system, will be very deep. Next up, there will be times where the player controls an Eikon in real time, battling other Eikons. Each Eikon versus Eikon battle is unique. One may be reminiscent of a 3D shooter, while another may be more like a pro wrestling match, while a third may transform the entire arena into a battlefield. Each will have a slight difference in user interface as well. So this is pretty massive. We're talking about having a 3D shooter, a wrestling type of gameplay, and then also have other types of gameplay as well. This is very interesting. I'm very intrigued by this. This makes these Eikon battles way more than just quick time events from the sounds of it. So I'm really looking forward to see how that plays out. I don't know what to compare it to, but the fact that we're going to see like different types of gameplay mechanics during these specific moments, like they went out of their way to make specific type of gameplay mechanics for each given Eikon battle, is pretty damn epic. And I just can't put it in any other way. That's super impressive. Next up, Clive will be accompanied by one or more companions for most of his journey, who will participate in battle as well as banter with Clive. These party members will be AI controlled, so that's a wrap. There will be no party members that you control. It'll be Clive, and then you'll have AI party members that fight with you, and that I'm okay with. I think that the thing with Final Fantasy, right? A lot of people say, well, Final Fantasy is known for its party systems and having lots of characters and having backstories on each character, and they play an integral role to the overarching story and cast. And of course, you can still have that here, except for you wouldn't control them. And I think when we look at a situation where you only control one party member, and that's the main character, I feel like it'll allow for deeper diving into his character progression and how he develops as a character. And I feel like those are things that are positive and can be actual benefits to doing in a Final Fantasy game. I am all for that. I think that's a great thing. And obviously, depending on how it's executed, it can be done immaculately, or obviously it can be done on a not so immaculate level. But I think in this case, with Naoki Yoshida, I feel like he is capable of having a deep character, and especially if it's a focus on really fleshing out your main character, and obviously other characters as well will have that time as well, but the main event, the main attraction is Clive. It's going to allow for even better storytelling. I'm not saying you can't do great storytelling with multiple characters and having them in your party and all of that, but I'm saying it's probably a lot easier to do it with just one character. Look at The Witcher. In The Witcher, you got Geralt, you got Ciri, right? Most of your time is spent controlling Geralt, and they really flesh out Geralt's character. They even do Ciri justice really well. That's one example of how it can benefit to just focus on one person that you control. Next up, there's the wolf pup from the first trailer, and it's named Torgal. As for whether Torgal will eventually play a role in combat, Yoshida says to wait and see. So this is one of those situations where he just doesn't want to tell you because it would ruin the surprise, right? So I would say it's probably alluding to that will be the case, but we'll see what happens. Next up, Creative Business Unit 3 chose a medieval fantasy style theme for Final Fantasy XVI because much of its core members, including Yoshida, simply enjoyed that style the most. And I think that's refreshing because we haven't seen a medieval styled Final Fantasy game in a while. I mean, it's been a long time. And for the main entry, and we're not talking about the online games, yeah, it's been a while. And honestly, those were always my favorite. Not to say I don't love and adore Final Fantasy VII. I absolutely do, but I do love Final Fantasy IX. I do love the first 3 Final Fantasy games as well. And so these are games that I really care about, and I love the theme, and I always wanted them to go back to a theme like that. And it's great, at least for me, to see that that's going to be the case. Next up, the game uses an independent area-based game design that can give players a better feel of a truly global scale, and it is not open world. And this is something I stand by 100%. Look, too many games out here are doing open world games, and they have no business doing open world games. Look, your game is not better because it's open world. You have to put that time in, that effort, make that world feel alive. It can't be a wasteland with emptiness. That doesn't make it a good open world game. Having these large-scale landscapes with nothing to do in them or just enemies littered around is not the way to make an open-world game. What you need is to do something like what Red Dead Redemption 2 did, where it's a fully fleshed-out world, it feels alive, there's so much to it. Like, that is a true definition and a good experience of an open-world game. But that doesn't mean your game's better just because it is. So I'm happy that they're going to make this more of a linear experience because I think that could be a positive thing. And I feel like having that focus on the environments and the characters and the story and the world building and not worrying about how much space you're going to have to explore and all that kind of stuff, it just works out better. I always preferred more linear games than anything. It also is sometimes a serious waste of time when they do these big open world games and they have all these different objectives, but a lot of them are repetitive. I don't like that. So for me, having a linear story is probably the best way to go. And to be honest, most Final Fantasy games are actually linear if you look at it. So that's not a surprise either. I think that this is probably the best way to go. So the next thing is the game will be a complete experience at launch, and there are currently no plans for the other tertiary content. So here's the thing. If you guys remember Final Fantasy 15, we had an anime, we had a movie, we had a book, we had the game, and we had DLC. And it's like, that's just not the way you should be experiencing a video game. If you want me to experience your story, you got to put it in the game, okay? I shouldn't have to go to all these other sources to get an understanding of what the main narrative of your game is and what's happening there, because that is a big no-no, at least for me. This is a video game at the end of the day. Tell your story in your video game. It's that simple. If you want to add other content to get a better understanding of the deeper lore of the world, that's a different story. But I should understand from point A to point B exactly what happened in that game and the story they're trying to tell. 15 did not have that, especially not at launch. So for me, this is a very, very good sign that 16 will be complete and will definitely probably be the best game that we've gotten from the Final Fantasy franchise in a long time. I'm not talking about remake. I'm talking about the main entries and definitely excluding online games because the MMOs are very, very different as well. But when it comes to the mainline franchise single-player experiences, I think this is going to be the best game since arguably 10 or 12. Next up, players will follow the life of Clive through 3 stages: his teens, his 20s, and his 30s. And that is going to be something a little different, right? We saw this in 15. We saw 15, there was 2 phases, right? It was like years would pass and the world changed drastically. But in this case, we're talking about 3 different phases of Clive's life. So I imagine we're going to see the world around him change. I imagine we're going to see characters change. He's obviously going to age. And I think that's very intriguing for me as well. I think this game is going to do something we have been seeing in a Final Fantasy game probably ever on this scale. So I'm really excited to see where this goes. Next up, Final Fantasy XVI is currently fully playable from start to finish, but voiceovers in multiple languages still need to be recorded, and as it is a very action-oriented game, much playtesting is required to fine-tune difficulty, put the final touches on cutscenes, and for full-scale debugging. So, game's done, it's just final touches, polishing this game, doing the languages. This is a very good sign that this is going to be on track for summer. I think we're going to see it summer 2023. I don't see it being pushed out of 2023, especially not summer. It just seems like they're really on track here. And this kind of ties in with the last point, which is a third trailer is planned for release this fall, which will concentrate more on the world, lore, and storyline. I'm interested to see if this is a state of play situation, if this is going to be a PlayStation Showcase situation. We'll see what happens. But that is all I have for you guys in today's video. This is kind of a longer video than I'm used to doing, but there was a lot of info and I really wanted to cover it all. Please let me know what you think of all this information. As always, if you enjoyed the content, please consider supporting by liking, subscribing, hit that notification bell, share this video. You can follow me on Twitter, Twitch. Links will be in the description. I will talk to you all on the next one. Take care.